With that, I now invite Mr. Marani, Program Director for Justice, Inclusion, and Equality at New York University Center on International Cooperation, to make an introductory statement. When you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador, and good morning, everyone, Excellencies, colleagues. Let me begin by thanking the Chair and the Bureau of the Third Committee for convening this discussion, continuing the tradition of engagement with civil society, and inviting me to speak this morning. Let me start by saying that as a former Third Committee delegate and having served for 4 presidents of the General Assembly, I hope that you take my remarks today with a constructive spirit. The Third Committee has a unique responsibility within the United Nations architecture, but anyone who served in this committee know the intensity of its calendar. Parallel negotiations, lengthy text, late nights. The workload is real and unsustainable. Precisely because of that intensity, sometimes becomes difficult to step back and ask a key question. Are our working methods helping translate the political ambition that we have in the room into actual implementation on the ground? Under the sustained pressure that you all face, practice has become a routine, and that's not unique for the Third Committee. At the UN, we're used to see texts being renewed, expanded, negotiated, but rarely assessed against implementation on the ground. In the Third Committee, that risk is amplified by the volume of annual resolutions and the heavy program of work that you all face. But let me tell you, ministries and other actors back home usually really struggle to implement the yearly outcomes of the Third Committee. When everything appears equally important, nothing indicates operational priority. Our colleagues back home really cannot distinguish what is politically central to a resolution and what just reflects a very delicate negotiating compromise that probably nobody understands. And this is not about blame. This is just the systemic way in which the Third Committee has been working for many decades. But we are in a different moment. We are in a moment of geopolitical fragmentation and a declining trust in multilateral institutions, and credibility is leverage. Strengthening the working methods and the way that how we work is not just a technical adjustment. It's a question to try to restore back the credibility change between negotiation here in the room, instruction to the system, and action on the ground. And why this is relevant? I think that the Third Committee performs 2 key roles in the context of the UN system. First is a political standard setting engine. It shapes the interpretation and evolution of social and human rights norms. In its universal resides the strength. 193 member states debating and agreeing on sensitive issues in one single place is key. That symbolic authority really matters. And second is an accountability forum, something that we usually forget, especially when we are deep in negotiations. Through the interactive dialogues that you have with special mandate holders, you are actually exercising an oversight role. An oversight on the work of the UN system, but also an oversight on country situations and thematic situations. Over time, however, these 2 functions can really grow apart as parallel tracks. On one hand, we have the Third Committee, that is the legislative forum where resolutions are negotiated and adopted every year. And another, an accountability forum, where evidence is presented by mandate holders, but rarely digested by the committee. Too often, they barely interact. The knowledge from the reports of the special mandate holders, if we are lucky, will shape some statements, but they rarely shape resolutions. That disconnect between the reports and the engagement with the special mandate holders and the resolution weakens both roles of the Third Committee. From our point of view at the Center of International Cooperation and NYU, the momentum needed for reflection and change already exists. It's not just because of the efforts of the ad hoc working group on revitalization or the impetus of the Pact of the Future discussion a couple of years ago and the current broader UN reform agenda. All those moments are creating the space to sit and review how we do business. But let me be clear. If you don't take these decisions, someone else is going to take the decisions for you. And one clear example is what happened this year. All of you were cut 10% of the time allocated to your work, the same as your First Committee colleagues, the Fifth Committee colleagues. Nobody took into account the difference on the committee, and that's because the decision is coming from outside and not from inside the committee. And nobody knows the Third Committee better than you do. You as delegate, but also us as part of this ecosystem that is the UN system and the other stakeholders that engage with its work. In my case, I hope that you understand that we are not calling for fewer resolutions, and definitely we are not calling for fewer interactive dialogues. Where we are calling is for resolutions that behave more like instructions and less as negotiating archives. And we are calling for dialogues that inform normative drafting in a structured, rational way. On that, let me give you three practical shifts that you can assess to achieve these goals. First, signal priority inside text. Only delegations know which paragraphs were politically sensitive. Implementers usually do not. Better drafting, shorter resolutions, and improved structuring can really communicate better what you care about without altering substance or existing agreements. Second, align review rhythms. Not every agenda item is required to be negotiating every year. Structure multi-cycles through biannualization or clustering can really reduce repetition while increasing space for implementation. And third, connect dialogue with drafting. Interactive dialogues generate evidence. You are sitting with some of the brightest minds in the world in this field. Negotiation generates norms. So try to create a more intentional bridge between the two in order to ensure that the findings from the report from the special mandate holders can really meaningfully shape the content of the resolutions. Thinking about resumed sessions in the spring for interactive dialogues that do not overlap with the negotiation seasons in the fall can make a huge difference, for example. Dear colleagues, much of what we name procedure in the General Assembly is only practice. And practice can evolve, and it has evolved in the past. I feel like a dinosaur when I remember that we were walking around this room with a paper sheet to get co-sponsors. You have to call for your colleagues and sign a paper in order to get a co-sponsor, and that was only 10 years ago. In the context, also look for other things that are happening around the third committee. In particular, the work of the informal ad hoc working group on mandate implementation review could be really instructive. The ad hoc working group that is being led by Jamaica and New Zealand can remind us that the mandates have a life cycle. Adoption is not the beginning. Adoption is just the beginning, it's not the end. And with that in mind, let me also mention 4 practical lessons when you design mandates. Draft mandates with implementation realism. What do you want to achieve? When and how do you want to achieve it? And who will be responsible for deliver? Consolidate reporting and reduce duplication to avoid mandate layering and agenda overload. Engage earlier with at the drafting stage with fifth committee colleagues, with your counterparts in Geneva, with the implementers, including the UN staff, to understand better what is the actual implication of the words that you choose. Those words matter, and they have impact. And also, feel free to normalize periodic review of your resolutions without being afraid of sometime leaving behind the agreed language. None of these will lower the standards of the third committee. It's actually protect it. Drafting better mandates is not an administrative housekeeping. It's a tool that you have at your disposition that which political agreement will become institutional action and ultimately improve people's life back home. We don't ask the third committee to work differently for the sake of progress or for the sake of saving money. We're just hoping that the agreements that you achieve here in the room can travel further. And if you care about rights, you also should care about how the mandates are delivered. Dear colleagues, thank you again for this opportunity. The authority of the third committee comes from its universality and the moral weight that results from dialogue and respect. But its credibility and the trust that people is placing on your job, on your work, depends on the actual delivery of those mandates. Strengthening working methods and mandate creation is how you will be able to protect both. Thank you.
Fernando, thank you so much for your thought and